Hey guys, tonight we settle into a story so old, it feels less like history and more like the gentle, deep murmur of the earth itself. We are going to close our eyes and let the warmth of our blanket become the very soil of ancient Greece, feeling the weight of centuries pressing softly on our chest. Imagine that you are curled up in a sun-drenched, quiet olive grove, the air still and heavy with the scent of dry leaves and warm stone. The shadows are long and cool now, and the setting sun casts a deep, amber glow across the gnarled trunks around you. Everything is drowsy. Everything is preparing for rest. You might think you know this story, the one with the lightning bolts and the flying sandals, but tonight we go back, further than the famous gods, back to when existence was just a suggestion. We peel back the layers of familiar tales and find the soft, dark kernel of creation waiting for you. You probably believe that every story must start with light, but this one begins in a vast, empty hush. Before you get too comfortable and possibly fall asleep halfway through, tap like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this odd mix of boredom and history. It keeps the channel alive and the stories just sleepy enough to help you drift off again next time. And please, if you are awake enough to type, let me know where you are listening from and what time it is for you right now. It is always comforting to know that we are settling down for the night together, across all those quiet miles. Now, dim the lights. Let the world outside grow quiet, and turn on a fan if you like that soft, steady hum in the background. Let your shoulders loosen and your breathing slow. This is your time to drift. No rush, no deadlines, no noise. Just you, a little warmth in the air, and the faint whisper of history waiting to unfold. So, settle in, and let's ease gently into tonight's journey together. You begin not in a cradle, but in the boundless, silent space of chaos. Imagine a slumber so deep that even dreams have not yet found their way in. Chaos is not confusion. It is simply the gaping yawn before anything is named or shaped. It is the infinite distance between your last thought and the gentle slope into sleep. There is no top, no bottom, no edge to rest your gaze upon. It is just the quiet, endless dark, soothing and immense. From this great, soft void, the first entities stir. It is not an explosion, but a slow, unfolding breath. First comes Gaia, the earth, broad and stable beneath your feet. Feel the reassuring firmness of the ground where you lie. That is Gaia's earliest presence. She is the foundation, the very bedrock of all that will ever be. She wakes up slow, stretching out her vast mountains and deepening her silent valleys, a mother before she has any children. Beside her, or perhaps above her, stretches Uranus, the starry sky. He is the dome of night you see when you look up, an endless, comforting blanket speckled with distant, faint lights. Uranus reaches over Gaia, their connection, defining the first boundary in the universe, the soft border between the solid ground and the endless air. And then there is Tartarus, a dark, misty depth far beneath Gaia, a prison and a grave, waiting for the unruly ones. You do not want to go there, so you simply let the notion of its quiet, eternal cold pass over you. Gaia and Uranus, the earth and the sky, settle into their long, silent companionship. They bring forth the original generation of powerful beings, the Titans. These are not the fussy, emotional gods you know, but enormous elemental forces, the very architecture of the universe made manifest. There are 6 sons and 6 daughters, each carrying a piece of the world's deep purpose. You feel the deep, steady rhythm of Oceanus and Tethys, the vast, quiet rivers and the deep, mysterious waters of the world. They are the currents that pull the ship gently out to sea, the endless supply of cool, running water. Then you notice Hyperion, the one who holds the sun and gives light, and Thea, who gives that light its brilliant sheen, its gold and silver. They are the slow, sure arc of the day, from the first pale light to the final, sleepy glimmer. There is Crius, a quiet, often forgotten one, embodying the cold, sharp edges of the cosmos. Beside him, Coeus represents the very axis upon which the sky slowly turns, the deep, fundamental intelligence of the universe. When you find yourself staring blankly at the ceiling, thinking nothing and everything, that quiet mental space is Coeus. The 2 most famous Titans emerge last. Rhea is the graceful flow, the nurturing abundance of the earth, a gentle mirror to Gaia's immense stability. She is the quiet moment after a heavy rain, when everything is fresh and full of promise. And finally, there is Cronus, the youngest and most ambitious, the Titan of time itself. He does not hold the hour, he holds the span of ages, the slow, inevitable movement toward an end. He carries a curved, sharp sickle, not for farming, but for cutting the endless flow. Alongside the 12 Titans, Gaia brings forth stranger, more troubling children. There are the 3 Cyclopes, each with a single, massive eye, masters of the forge, whose soft breath sounds like the rush of air through a huge furnace. They represent raw, powerful craftsmanship. And then come the 3 Hecatonchires, the 100-handed ones, huge, unshakable giants with 50 heads and 100 hands each, capable of massive, slow destruction. They embody the terrifying, powerful stability of the earth when it decides to shift. Uranus, the sky, grows increasingly nervous about his strange, powerful children. He loves Gaia, but he fears the sheer, chaotic strength of the Cyclopes and the 100-handed ones. You can almost feel his immense tension, like the air right before a thunderstorm, tight and still. His solution is simple and cruel. As soon as they are born, he shoves them back into Gaia's massive body, pushing them deep down into the crushing darkness of Tartarus. Gaia, the earth, feels the terrible pressure of her children trapped within her. It is a slow, grinding pain, like a deep ache in your bones when the weather changes. She finds no peace. She feels the terrible strain of the cosmos resting upon her, and she needs help to shake the burden off. She reaches out to her Titan children, whispering to them from the mountain sides and the cool caves. Only Cronus, the Titan of time, listens fully. He is quiet, clever, and harbors a deep resentment for his father's distant, controlling nature. This feels a little like family drama, doesn't it? Just imagine trying to organize a family reunion when half your siblings have 100 hands and the other half are currently trapped inside your mother. Historians still argue whether this act of Uranus was driven purely by fear, or if it was part of a cosmic necessity to control the wild, primal energy of the early universe. Cronus takes the massive sickle that Gaia gives him, a terrible, jagged thing, and waits for his chance. One quiet, unsuspecting night, as Uranus stretched down to cover the earth, Cronus strikes. The soft sound of that primal, cosmic violence echoes only in the quiet of the unformed world. Uranus screams as he is struck, and he recoils, forever separating himself fully from Gaia. As he pulls away, the drops of his divine, powerful blood fall upon the earth. These drops are not wasted. They soak into Gaia and sprout the seeds of further conflict, the ferocious, snake-haired Aranes, furious, who tirelessly pursue those who commit crimes against their kin, the armed, muscular giants, and the beautiful, whispering Melea's ash-tree nymphs. A quirky tidbit. Some accounts say the Malaya nymphs were the ancestors of the bronze race of men, springing fully formed from the ash trees that grew where the blood fell. As Uranus is pushed away, forever retreating to the distant edge of the sky, a strange, beautiful thing happens over the sea. The severed part of Uranus falls into the ocean, and from the mingling of divine essence and ocean foam, a new goddess emerges. This is Aphrodite, rising from the soft, pale waves, fully grown and shimmering, the very personification of love, beauty, and desire. She is an immediate, inescapable force in the world, born from a moment of ancient pain. With Uranus banished to the celestial edges, Cronus, the cunning and quiet Titan, assumes control of the cosmos. This period is often mythologized as the golden age for mortals, though the mortals themselves have not been properly created yet. It is an age of quiet, steady rule, a time when life is said to be easy and nature is utterly benevolent. There are no seasons, no suffering, no aging. The world is a place of slow, gentle perfection, much like the feeling you get right before you fall asleep, when all worries feel distant and soft. Cronus rules with his sister Rhea. Their Titan siblings take their places, holding the universe in its new, quieter arrangement. But the peace is deceptive, built on an echo of the violence that created it. Cronus is afraid. He remembers what he did to his father, and the whispers of fate tell him he is doomed to the same end. One of his own children will overthrow him. To prevent this inevitable, cyclical pattern, Cronus decides on a desperate plan that seems utterly monstrous from your comfortable modern perspective. As Rhea gives birth, Cronus swallows each child whole. It is a slow, chilling action, a deliberate, quiet removal of the future. He consumes Hestia, then Demeter, then Hera, then Hades, and then Poseidon. One after the other, they disappear into the vast interior of the Titan of time. Mainstream historical fact. The practice of swallowing divine offspring to prevent a challenge to power is a motif found in several ancient, Near Eastern creation myths. suggesting a common storytelling heritage in the region that influenced the Greek narrative. Rhea, the mother, is heartbroken and consumed by a cold, quiet dread. She watches her children disappear, knowing they are not dead, but held captive inside their terrible father. When she is pregnant for the 6th time, she seeks help from her parents, Gaia and Uranus. They whisper a plan to her, a way to trick the watchful, wary Cronus. Rhea travels far to the island of Crete, a place of deep caves and whispering greenery. There, in secret, she gives birth to the final child, a strong, healthy boy named Zeus. When she returns to Cronus, she wraps a large stone in baby clothes, making it look and feel like a tightly bundled infant. Cronus, trusting his own ruthlessness and perhaps feeling the deep, sleepy satisfaction of having solved his problem, swallows the stone without looking too closely. He is content, believing the cycle is broken. He has stopped time itself from producing the one who would challenge him. Meanwhile, young Zeus is hidden away in a deep cave on Mount Ida in Crete. He is raised in secret, nurtured by the nymphs, and fed on the gentle milk of a goat named Amalthea. His cries, which might give away his location, are muffled by the lively, cleansing dances of the Curetes, armed attendants who crash their spears and shields together to create a rhythmic, reassuring noise. You can almost hear that steady, metallic hum now, a soft, rocking sound that covers the truth. Zeus grows quickly, nurtured by his hidden existence and the powerful, elemental forces around him. He is strong, clever, and carries the bright, sudden force of the sky in his eyes. When he is finally a young man, prepared for his destiny, Zeus seeks out the Titaness Metis, whose name means deep wisdom and cunning counsel. Metis is a quiet, knowing force, and she prepares a magical draught for Zeus. This is not a poison, but a terrible medicine designed to force Cronus to finally release what he holds captive. Zeus, disguised, manages to serve the drink to his father. The effect is immediate and devastating. Cronus is suddenly, violently sick, emptying his vast insides, and out of his mouth come the 5 swallowed children, one after the other, in reverse order: Poseidon, Hades, Hera, Demeter, and Hestia. They emerge whole, fully grown, and burning with a deep, cold anger for the time they lost and the injustice they suffered. The stone that was swallowed first comes out last, a silent, white testament to the trick. The 6 siblings, Zeus, Poseidon, Hades, Hera, Demeter, and Hestia, now stand together. They are the newest generation of immense power, the Olympians, ready to claim the world for themselves. The stage is set for a massive, slow, cosmic war, the vastest conflict the universe will ever see. Zeus leads his siblings to Mount Olympus, a peak so high it disappears into the quiet, thin air, a new seat of power towering over the misty plains of Greece. From this high vantage point, you see the world spread out like a sleeping map. The battle lines are drawn, and the air begins to thicken with expectation. This great struggle, which will decide the entire order of the cosmos, is called the Titanomachy. It will not be a fast fight, but a long, slow grind of powerful wills. The Titans gather their strength on Mount Othrys, ready to defend the quiet, steady rule of Cronus. The Olympians, younger, angrier, and full of bright, chaotic energy, prepare to tear the old order down. You settle in, listening to the deep, heavy silence before the first, slow movement of cosmic war begins. It feels like the brief, intense stillness, just before you finally surrender to sleep. You remain settled on the high slopes of Olympus, watching the vast landscape below, feeling the cold, thin air and the quiet certainty that this massive conflict, the Titanomachy, is inevitable. The world is divided, the old, solid, slow power of the Titans entrenched on Mount Othrys, and the younger, more vibrant force of the Olympians ready on Olympus. This is not a war of short skirmishes. It is a long, deliberate clash of cosmic forces that stretches out over 10 long, wearying years. The sound of the fighting is not a loud, sudden crash, but a continuous, grinding noise, like huge boulders slowly wearing against each other deep beneath the earth. The conflict rages across the misty landscape. The Titans, led by Cronus, are formidable. They are the mountains, the rivers, the very texture of the world, and they fight with the slow, unstoppable momentum of geological time. The Olympians, however, fight with a fierce, unified determination, their power focused on breaking the established order. You can imagine the air itself vibrating with the immense, unseen power being spent every day. The sky above you is perpetually bruised with shadow and light. Zeus understands that raw power alone will not win this war. He knows he needs allies far older and more primal than the Titans themselves. So, he slowly descends, seeking the deep, imprisoned heart of the earth. He travels down, through the silent tunnels of his grandmother, Gaia, until he reaches the profound, chilling darkness of Tartarus. Remember the strange children of Gaia that Uranus imprisoned. Zeus finds the 3 monstrous cyclopes and the 3 colossal hecatonchyes, the 100-handed ones, languishing in the cold, misty depths. They are silent, bitter, and immensely powerful. Zeus does not treat them as prisoners, he treats them as allies. He speaks to them softly, patiently, offering them freedom and a chance for vengeance against the old ruler, Cronus. The Cyclops, masters of fire and metal, are immediately loyal to the one who freed them. In gratitude, they forge incredible weapons for the young gods, weapons that feel like the distilled essence of the cosmos. For Zeus, they craft the mighty lightning bolts, sudden, terrifying bursts of focused energy. Imagine the air crackling and smelling faintly of ozone near him now. For Poseidon, they forge the trident, a weapon that can shake the very foundation of the sea and land. And for Hades, they create the helm of darkness, a soft, quiet cap that grants the wearer complete, perfect invisibility. These are not just tools, they are symbols of the raw, elemental forces the Olympians now command. The hecatonchyes, with their immense strength, are even more valuable. Their 100 hands can throw hundreds of massive rocks simultaneously, creating a terrifying, continuous soft rain of destruction upon the Titan lines. Their 50 heads allow them to observe the entire battlefield, a quiet, powerful presence that slowly tips the scales. With these new, formidable allies, the tides of the war slowly begin to turn. The final, crushing battle is a massive display of cosmic force. Zeus stands on Olympus, his lightning bolts not striking with a loud crack, but with a continuous, deep, resonant hum that shakes the air around you. The earth moans deeply as Poseidon thrusts his trident downward, causing slow, terrifying tremors across the battlefield. The massive rocks thrown by the handed ones descend like 1,000 slow, silent missiles, burying the Titans under the sheer, immense weight of the planet. Cronus and the other Titans fight bravely, but they cannot stand against the elemental power and the focused intensity of the freed creatures and the young gods. This is where you realize the deep, generational cruelty of the cosmos. One generation's fear becomes the next generation's fuel. Finally, the Titans are defeated. Zeus is merciful, but final. He does not destroy them entirely, but he banishes them, every single one of them, to the deepest, coldest part of the underworld, back into Tartarus, the realm that swallowed his father's victims so long ago. The Hecatonchires, having done their job, are placed at the misty, cold gates of Tartarus, serving as the eternal, silent guards who ensure the ancient, powerful prisoners never stir again. With the defeat of the Titans, Zeus and his siblings have won the right to rule, but the world is still reeling, raw, and unorganized. They must decide who gets to rule which domain. The three strongest brothers draw lots in a quiet, solemn moment. It is a strangely democratic decision for such a powerful group, a moment of surprising fairness in an otherwise brutal history. Historians still argue whether this lot drawing was a genuinely peaceful decision, or if the result was subtly manipulated by Zeus to ensure his own dominance over the most visible domain. The results are simple. Zeus draws the lot for the sky and the air, claiming the highest domain, the realm of weather, law, and ultimate authority. Poseidon draws the lot for the sea, all the deep, moving, mysterious waters of the world. He goes on to command the waves and the quiet, crushing depths, causing the soft shift of earthquakes when his temper is stirred. Hades, the oldest son, draws the third lot, the underworld. He takes his place in the cold, silent realm of the dead, a king in the darkness, a domain that is vast and eternal, but far from the sunshine. The sisters, the goddesses, also find their roles. Hera becomes Zeus's chief wife, and the queen of the gods, ruling over marriage, family, and the quiet dignity of the home. Hestia, the quietest and most gentle, chooses to forego a specific worldly domain, and instead becomes the goddess of the hearth, the central, warm heart of every home, embodying peace, stability, and the soft, steady glow of the fire. Demeter becomes the goddess of the harvest and agriculture, the steady growth and cyclical abundance of the earth, the one who ensures the gentle, rhythmic turning of the seasons. Now, with the cosmos organized under this new, powerful family, the Olympians establish their official home high up on Mount Olympus. This is where you finally feel comfortable, knowing the foundational violence is over. The palace is an imagined space of brilliant light, soft, swirling clouds, and perpetual comfort. They feast on ambrosia and drink nectar, food and drink so light and perfect. They ensure eternal life and smooth, unending well-being. This must be the most exclusive dinner party in all of history. No RSVP needed, but the guest list is very, very short. But the cosmos is not quite settled yet. Old Gaia, still the Earth, is not happy with the imprisonment of the Titans, her ancient children. She stirs, and from her deepest, most furious core, she produces one last, terrifying challenge to the Olympian rule, Typhon. Typhon is a monstrous, colossal creature, the physical manifestation of all the Earth's uncontrolled fury. He has 100 terrible snake heads, eyes that glow with soft, internal fire, and a voice that sounds like 1,000 quiet, rumbling thunderclaps combined. The sheer terror of his presence is enough to make the other gods flee. Most of the Olympians, seeing this terrifying new monster, transform themselves into quiet, harmless animals, doves, goats, or fish, and flee the mountain, swimming or flying far away to Egypt in a moment of panic. Only Zeus stands firm, facing this final, overwhelming terror alone. The battle with Typhon is even more intense and focused than the Titanomachy. It is a terrifying duel between the king of the sky and the deepest fury of the earth. The whole world shakes, and the sea boils gently under the heat of the conflict. At one point, Typhon manages to strike Zeus and tear out the sinews and tendons from his hands and feet, essentially crippling him and leaving him helpless. Typhon hides the sinews away, guarded by another monstrous serpent. But the quiet, clever god Hermes, the messenger, works in secret. Slipping past the giant guardian, he manages to recover the sinews and restore them to Zeus. A slow, gentle act of restoration that returns the king of the gods to his full strength. Refreshed, Zeus unleashes his true, relentless power. He chases Typhon across the world, relentlessly pelting him with a continuous, soft storm of his endless lightning bolts. Finally, Zeus corners the immense monster and traps him beneath a gigantic mountain, Mount Etna in Sicily. It is not a quick death. It is an eternal, quiet confinement. To this day, the deep rumbling and the occasional flare of volcanic fire and smoke are said to be Typhon, stirring restlessly in his massive prison, his endless, frustrated breaths echoing the violence of creation. The world is finally, truly secured for the Olympian age. The Olympians return to their mountain home, secure in their dominance. They begin to define their unique personalities and roles, creating the rich tapestry of myth that you know so well. This is the moment you can finally relax, feeling the stability of the new order settling softly into place. This immense structure of gods and domains, this hierarchy, is the foundational power that will define the next many thousands of years of human stories. You have already met the core family, but the Olympian circle expands to 12 main gods. Beyond the 6 siblings, the next generation emerges, children of Zeus and various others, each embodying another vital aspect of human experience. There is Ares, the quiet, simmering god of war, embodying the brutal, often necessary violence of conflict. He is the restless energy that sometimes keeps you from falling asleep. His half-sister, Athena, emerges fully formed from Zeus's head after he swallows her pregnant mother Metis. She is the goddess of strategic warfare, wisdom and craft, the calm, cool logic that guides you. Apollo and Artemis are twins. Apollo is the god of the sun, light, music and prophecy, a bright, clear voice. Artemis is the quiet, fierce goddess of the moon, the hunt and wild, untamed nature, moving silently through the deep woods. Then comes Hephaestus, the crippled but brilliant smith of the gods, master of the quiet, patient craft of the forge, often busy creating beautiful, soft mechanical wonders. He is married to the previously mentioned Aphrodite, the goddess of love, who brings a soft, irresistible pull to the world. Finally, we welcome Hermes, the quick, silver-footed messenger, the god of travelers, commerce, and luck, always moving, always bridging the gap between the divine and the mortal. These 12 gods, Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, Demeter, Hestia, sometimes replaced by Dionysus later one, Athena, Apollo, Artemis, Ares, Aphrodite, Hephaestus, and Hermes, are the quiet, powerful government of the world. It is important to understand that the Greek gods are not like the single, distant deities of later religions. They are very much like the humans they will soon create, only immensely more powerful and immortal. They are vain, jealous, loving, quick-tempered, and deeply flawed. They represent all the bright and dark complexities of the human spirit. They are not perfect. They are simply permanent. You feel the vast, slow turning of the cosmos under their control now. The storms that rage are Zeus's frustration. The quiet, slow growth of the grain is Demeter's care. The restless, shifting sea is Poseidon's restless temper. Every aspect of the world, from the deepest sleep to the brightest, most awake moment, is now governed by one of these powerful, relatable figures. You are ready to see how their personalities, their quiet, deep dramas, will shape the lives of the mortals they are about to bring forth. You are now settled into the new world order, perched quietly on the edge of the Olympian era. The immense cosmic battles have subsided, leaving behind a stable, though certainly not peaceful, hierarchy. The mountain is quiet again, save for the soft clinking sound of Hephaestus's forge and the gentle, distant sound of Apollo's lyre. This is the time when the gods solidify their rule and begin to look down upon the quiet, waiting earth, ready to mold the future. The focus shifts now to Zeus, the king of the gods. He is not a distant, passive ruler, but a powerful, charismatic, and deeply flawed figure. He embodies the sheer force of authority, tempered by a restless, often impulsive nature. His power is undeniable. His presence feels like the heavy silence just before a spectacular bolt of lightning illuminates the night sky. He is the ultimate law, the source of balance, but he also possesses an overwhelming desire for connection, often outside his marriage. This brings us to his long-suffering wife, Hera, She is the queen of the gods, the fierce protector of marriage and childbirth, and the goddess who embodies the quiet, deep dignity of the home. Hera's role in the myths is often defined by her reaction to Zeus's endless infidelities. She rarely takes her anger out on Zeus directly, understanding his immense power, but instead directs her cool, slow, and terrible vengeance toward his mortal lovers and their resulting children. Her wrath is not loud and fiery, but a quiet, patient, inescapable force, like a slow illness that runs its course over decades. The interplay between Zeus and Hera forms the central drama of Mount Olympus. It is a cosmic soap opera, perhaps, but one with devastating consequences for the mortals below. Whenever Zeus takes a new lover, the resultant conflict shakes the whole world. It is a quiet reminder that even the highest, most powerful relationships in the universe are often messy and complicated. Now that the gods are settled, the creation of mortals begins. This is not always a smooth process. One enduring tradition, however, centers on the Titan Prometheus, whose name softly suggests forethought. Prometheus is a quiet, thoughtful Titan who sided with the Olympians during the Titanomachy. He is often credited with crafting the first men from simple, damp earth and cool water, shaping them with a gentle, patient hand. He breathes life into them, making them walk upright, capable of looking up at the stars and seeing the majesty of the sky that they are not yet fully a part of. Prometheus sees the helplessness of his creation and wants to give them something more. He wants them to thrive, to understand the complexity of the world, and to have a quiet measure of control over their own destiny. He sees that the gods are keeping the essential knowledge of fire for themselves. Fire is not just warmth, it is civilization, the ability to cook, to forge, to see in the dark, and to keep the wild world at bay. In a quiet, rebellious act of pure compassion, Prometheus steals fire from the god's hearth, often from the soft, eternal flame of Hestia, and brings it down to the trembling mortals, hiding the glowing embers inside a hollow fennel stalk. It is a small, brilliant spark that changes everything. Zeus is furious at this quiet betrayal. He sees that giving fire to mortals gives them too much power, too much self-sufficiency, and that this act of kindness will lessen their need for the gods. He determines to punish Prometheus with a terrible, slow, and eternal sentence. Prometheus is chained high up on a desolate mountain peak in the Caucasus, where every day a large, dark eagle descends and slowly consumes his liver, which quietly grows back overnight, only to be consumed again the next day. It is an image of unending, quiet suffering, a heavy price to pay for compassion. Zeus also decides to punish the mortals for accepting the gift. He asks Hephaestus to create a woman of perfect, irresistible beauty and soft charm. This woman is named Pandora, meaning all gifts. Each god contributes a gift: charm from Aphrodite, soft speech from Hermes, and so on. She is presented to Prometheus's foolish brother, Epimetheus, Afterthought, who had been quietly warned by Prometheus never to accept a gift from Zeus. Pandora comes with a large, beautiful jars, often incorrectly called a box, which she is told never to open. But the gods have instilled in her a deep, restless curiosity. You can almost feel the gentle, quiet itch of that forbidden knowledge pulling at her. She finally opens the jar in a moment of soft, irresistible impulse. When the lid is slowly lifted, out rush all the quiet, terrible ills of the world's sickness, pain, toil, envy, and the slow, weary burden of hard labor. They swarm out into the fresh new world. Terrified, Pandora slams the lid shut. Only one thing remains trapped inside the bottom of the jar: hope. Thus, mortals are left to wander the world, burdened by sorrow and pain, but always retaining that one quiet, enduring quality to keep them from giving up. Now that mortals exist, the gods become deeply involved in their lives, often walking among them in quiet disguise. This transition marks the beginning of the Age of Heroes. The most famous of these early heroes, and the one whose quiet life embodies the complex relationship between gods and men, is Heracles, or Hercules, as he is commonly known today. Heracles is the son of Zeus and a mortal woman named Alcmene. Hera's quiet rage against this child is immediate and terrifyingly powerful. Even as an infant, Hera sends two large, venomous snakes to his crib. The scene is not one of panic, but of astonishing, early strength. The baby Heracles simply reaches out and quietly crushes the snakes in his two tiny, strong hands. Hera's malice continues to plague him throughout his life. Later, she inflicts him with a terrible, temporary madness. In his blind, quiet fury, Heracles tragically kills his own wife and children. When he awakes from this terrible, short-lived nightmare, the weight of his actions nearly crushes him. Seeking atonement and peace, he goes to the oracle of Delphi, the voice of Apollo, who quietly directs him to serve his weak cousin, King Eurystheus of Mycenae, for 12 years. This service requires him to perform the famous 12 labors, a series of impossible, quiet tasks designed by Hera and Eurystheus to kill him. This entire saga is a masterclass in quiet, enduring effort against overwhelming odds. The labors feel less like great adventures and more like an endless to-do list for a very strong, very tired man. You follow him as he quietly completes these tasks. 1. He kills the ferocious Nemean lion using only his bare hands, as its skin is impenetrable, and he uses the heavy hide as a quiet, powerful cloak for the rest of his life. 2. He faces the Lernaean Hydra, a quiet swamp creature whose heads grow back twofold when severed. He burns the necks with a slow, steady fire, cauterizing the wounds. 3. He must capture the extremely fast, quiet Ceryneian hind, a sacred deer with golden antlers, which requires a year of quiet, patient tracking. 4. He captures the fierce Erymanthian boar, a huge, dangerous creature that he quietly tires out by chasing it through the deep snow. 5. In one of the most famously unpleasant tasks, he must clean the vast, filthy Augean stables, which requires redirecting the flow of 2 rivers. A massive, slow, engineering feat accomplished in a single day. A light joke here. If you think cleaning your room is hard, imagine explaining to your landlady that you need to reroute 2 major rivers to get the job done. 6. He drives away the noisy, bronze, beaked Stymphalian birds, quiet, shattering creatures that he scares away with the clanging of a bronze rattle. 7. He travels far to capture the beautiful but aggressive Cretan bull. 8. He must deal with the flesh-eating mares of Diomedes. 9. He quietly secures the girdle of Hippolyta, the queen of the Amazons. 10. He goes on the immensely long, quiet journey to fetch the cattle of the triple-bodied giant Geryon. 11. He must fetch the golden apples from the garden of the Hesperides, requiring him to briefly hold up the sky for the weary Titan Atlas. This is surely the ultimate hold my beer moment in history. 12. And finally, the ultimate task. He must descend into the silent, chilling underworld and bring back the 3-headed dog, Cerberus, a massive, quiet guardian of the gates. Heracles completes every single task, quiet, determined, and enduring. His life, however, remains marked by tragedy and the constant, slow manipulation of Hera. His suffering, inflicted by the gods, paradoxically makes him the greatest hero, a figure who quietly proves that mortal strength and endurance can sometimes equal, or even surpass, the pettiness of the immortals. This entire saga of Heracles is a wonderful example of the fundamental difference between modern, linear history and the quiet, layered structure of myth. These myths were not just stories, they were once attempts to explain the world, morality, and the quiet, capricious nature of divine power. Mainstream historical fact. The labors of Heracles were often depicted on the metopes, square panels of the temple of Zeus at Olympia, serving as visual propaganda for the strength and divine connection of the city-state that hosted the Olympic Games. The quiet, central debate among scholars about Heracles is whether his heroic qualities stemmed from his divine parentage or his mortal endurance. Historians still argue whether Heracles' greatness comes from the lightning in his blood or the sheer, slow will that allowed him to endure Hera's quiet persecution. He is the quiet meeting point of God and man, power and suffering. As Heracles' quiet, determined journey continues, the influence of the gods spreads across the mortal world. You see how Poseidon can shape the quiet course of events through the sea, a powerful, often ignored force. Apollo exerts his will through his oracle at Delphi, a woman who sits over a fissure, whispering the soft, confusing words of prophecy that guide kings and heroes down winding, difficult paths. You realize that under the Olympian rule, fate is not a grand, crushing force, but a complex, often quiet web of small decisions, divine whims, and the stubborn will of mortals like Heracles. The stage is perfectly set now for the next wave of stories, the age of true adventure, when heroes do not just endure suffering, but actively seek out the quiet, mysterious edges of the known world. You prepare to drift into that great, unknown horizon, feeling the promise of adventure ahead. The quiet life of endurance and suffering embodied by Heracles fades now, and you prepare to drift into an age of active searching and grand adventure. The gods are still immensely powerful, But they have learned to use heroes as their instruments, quietly directing mortal destiny through omens, dreams, and the subtle manipulation of desire. We begin to trace the lineage of other heroes who are born from these volatile divine, mortal unions, setting the stage for even greater quests. One of the most defining of these quiet adventures involves Perseus. You feel the gentle tug of fate pulling him from a young age. His story is defined by a prophecy, a whispered fear that becomes a reality. His grandfather, King Acrisius of Argos, receives a clear, chilling message from the oracle. His daughter's son will be his eventual downfall. Fearing this fate, the king locks his daughter, Danag, away in a bronze tower, a quiet, inescapable prison. But Zeus, the ever-restless king of the sky, is not deterred by bronze or walls. He visits Danag not with loud thunder, but with a soft, warm shower of golden light and gentle rain that seeps through the roof and settles upon her. She becomes pregnant, and in the quiet isolation of her prison, she gives birth to Perseus. When the king discovers the baby, he is terrified. He cannot bring himself to directly kill his daughter and grandson, fearing the terrible wrath of the gods who punish kin-slaying. Instead, he places them both into a large wooden chest, seals it tightly, and quietly casts the chest into the vast, indifferent sea. You imagine them bobbing gently on the dark, restless waves, a small, fragile life floating in the immensity of Poseidon's domain, the sea god. Perhaps feeling a moment of quiet sympathy, keeps the waves gentle, and the chest eventually washes ashore on the island of Seriphos. They are found by a kind fisherman, Dictys, whose name means net, and who raises Perseus in the quiet, humble life of a fisherman. Years later, the island's king, Polydectes, becomes obsessed with Danag. To get rid of the strong, watchful Perseus, the king tricks him into promising an impossible, deadly gift, the head of the Medusa. Medusa is one of the three monstrous Gorgon sisters. She is a terrifying figure, whose hair is a tangled mass of living, quiet snakes, and whose gaze turns any unfortunate mortal who meets her eyes instantly into cold, lifeless stone. This task is a death sentence, a journey to the darkest, most terrifying edges of the world. Perseus's quiet courage is recognized by the gods, and they decide to intervene, not by doing the work for him, but by giving him the right tools, a lesson that even the most powerful heroes need the right equipment. Athena, the goddess of strategy, gives him a highly polished, softly reflecting shield to look at Medusa's reflection instead of her direct gaze. Hermes, the messenger, provides him with his winged sandals, allowing him to move quickly and quietly through the air. He also receives Hades's helm of darkness, the cap of invisibility, which makes him disappear into the shadows. With these gifts, Perseus begins his long, quiet quest. He must first find the three ancient, Grey, who share a single eye and a single tooth. He quietly steals their eye while they are passing it between them, forcing them to reveal the hidden location of the Gorgons. This is a moment of pure, clever trickery triumphing over brute force. Perseus flies far, far away to the distant, misty land of the Gorgons. He approaches the sleeping Medusa, guided only by the soft reflection in his shield. He does not look directly. He simply holds the shield up, aims his sword at the reflected image, and with one swift, quiet movement, he severs her head. From Medusa's severed neck, two strange creatures emerge: the magnificent winged horse, Pegasus, and the giant, Chrysaor. Perseus quietly tucks the grotesque, still, glowing head into a special bag and flies away, using the helm of darkness to evade Medusa's two immortal, chasing sisters. On his quiet flight home, Perseus spots a beautiful maiden chained, naked to a desolate sea cliff, waiting to be consumed by a massive, silent sea monster sent by Poseidon. This is Andromeda, the princess of Ethiopia, sacrificed to appease the god's quiet wrath. Perseus quickly swoops down, quiet and invisible, and uses the head of Medusa to turn the sea monster into stone, saving the princess and claiming her as his wife. When he finally returns to Seriphos, the first thing he does is quietly crash the banquet where the evil king Polydectes is attempting to force his mother, Danag, into marriage. Perseus announces his arrival and, with a soft, final statement, reveals the horrible gift he has brought. He holds up the Gorgon's head, and the entire royal court is instantly turned into a collection of stone statues, caught forever in their greedy, surprised poses. Perseus, having fulfilled his fate, then quietly sails away. The original prophecy, however, still waits. Years later, while competing in a local athletics contest, Perseus accidentally throws a discus that veers off course in the soft air and strikes an elderly spectator. That spectator, his quiet life ended by accident, is none other than King Acrisius, his grandfather. The prophecy, long feared and desperately avoided, is quietly fulfilled by a cruel twist of fate, proving that divine will, even when expressed through quiet chants, cannot be stopped. As the tale of Perseus settles softly, a deeper, more complicated hero emerges: Theseus, the great hero of Athens. Theseus is also the son of a king, but his father, King Aegeus of Athens, leaves him to be raised quietly by his mother. Before leaving, Aegeus places his soft sandals and his sword underneath a massive, heavy rock, telling his mother that when the boy is strong enough to quietly lift the stone, he should be sent to Athens. When Theseus finally retrieves the tokens of his birth, he chooses the dangerous land route to Athens, rather than the safe sea journey. He believes that a true hero does not take the easy path. His journey is a quiet, determined walk against a series of terrifying bandits and monsters who prey on the unwary traveler. You accompany him as he quietly and justly defeats these men, often using their own tricks against them. There is Procrustes, the quiet innkeeper who forces travelers to fit his iron bed, either stretching the short ones or sawing off the limbs of the tall ones. Theseus fits Procrustes to his own bed in a moment of quiet, satisfying retribution. When he finally reaches Athens, he finds a city under a quiet, terrible curse. Every 9 years, Athens must send 7 young men and 7 young women to Crete as a tribute to King Minos. These 14 youths are offered to the Minotaur, a terrible, quiet monster, half man, half bull, that lives in a vast, twisting maze called the Labyrinth. The story of the Minotaur is a fascinating, quiet piece of history. King Minos' wife, Pasiphae, was cursed by the gods, result of Minos failing to sacrifice a bull gifted by Poseidon. She gave birth to the quiet, hungry monster. Minos then hires the great, quiet inventor Daedalus to build the inescapable labyrinth to hide the shame. Theseus volunteers to go as one of the sacrificial victims, determined to end the tribute forever. When he arrives in Crete, he immediately captures the heart of Ariadne, King Minos' daughter. Ariadne is quiet and clever, and she knows the secret of the labyrinth. She approaches Theseus in secret and gives him a simple tool, a ball of soft thread. Theseus promises to marry her and takes the thread, quietly tying one end to the labyrinth entrance and slowly unwinding the ball as he moves deeper into the maze. You follow him through the dark, turning corridors. The only sound the soft scuff of his sandals and the quiet unspooling of the thread. He finally finds the Minotaur in the deep, silent center of the maze. The fight is quick and quiet. Theseus, in a moment of mortal strength, uses his hands and his sword to kill the beast. He then quietly follows the thread back out of the twisting darkness, leading the remaining Athenian youths to safety. He sails away with Ariadne, but on the way home, in a quiet, inexplicable twist of fate or command from the gods, he abandons her on the island of Naxos. The return to Athens is marked by a fatal, quiet error. King Aegeus had instructed Theseus to raise a white sail on his ship if he succeeded, but to keep the black sail raised if he died. Theseus, perhaps forgetting in his grief or triumph, neglects to change the sail. King Aegeus, waiting anxiously on a high cliff, sees the black sail approaching. Believing his son is dead, he quietly throws himself into the sea below. This act of profound, silent despair gives his name to that body of water, the Aegean Sea. Theseus becomes the new king, bringing peace and a sense of quiet justice to Athens. A quirky tidbit about Theseus, one of the long-standing philosophical debates, known as the Ship of Theseus, asks whether an object that has had all of its components replaced remains fundamentally the same object. This debate mirrors the slow, quiet changes we all undergo over a lifetime. While Theseus's story defines Athens, the quiet current of destiny begins to pull toward the next massive event, the epic of the Argonauts. This quiet journey is a story about the desire for what is unreachable, a goal that everyone says is impossible. The journey centers on Jason, the rightful heir to the throne of Iolcus, whose kingdom was quietly usurped by his hungry uncle, Peleus. Peleus receives an oracle that warns him to beware of a man wearing only one sandal. Sure enough, Jason appears one day, having lost one sandal while helping an old woman, who was secretly the goddess Hera in disguise, across a muddy river. Peleus, fearing the prophecy, quietly agrees to give up the throne, but only if Jason first brings him the golden fleece. This fleece, from a winged ram that saved 2 children, hangs high in a sacred grove in the distant, dangerous land of Colchis, guarded by a sleepless dragon and a field of quiet, armed men sound from dragons' teeth. Peleus assumes this quest is another death sentence. Jason quietly agrees and begins to gather the greatest heroes of his age. They come together to sail on a massive, beautiful ship built by the great craftsman Argus, a ship that, in some accounts, is said to have a magical piece of wood from the speaking oak of Dodona, allowing it to softly whisper prophecies. The crew is collectively known as the Argonauts, and their ship is the Argo. Among the Argonauts are some familiar and new names: Heracles, who leaves the quest early, the quiet singer Orpheus, the swift-footed Atalanta, and the twin horsemen Castor and Pollux. They represent a collective, unified push toward the quiet unknown. The stage is set. The sails are ready, and the quiet journey into the vast, open sea is about to begin. This quest is not about fate or madness. It is about the quiet, determined will to achieve the impossible. The great, quiet ship Argo now rests lightly on the water, prepared for its immense, slow journey into the unexplored edges of the world. You are aboard with Jason and the finest heroes of the age, the Argonauts, a company of quiet determination sailing toward a goal everyone believes is unattainable, the Golden Fleece. The air is fresh and salty, and the sound of the oars dipping and lifting is a soft, steady rhythm, the first beat of a long, collective adventure. Their journey is a gentle, sprawling narrative across a mythological map, a voyage that requires not just strength, but cunning, unity, and a quiet sense of purpose. They are traveling far east, toward the kingdom of Colchis, a place of deep magic and distant, unknowable dangers. The first quiet challenge they face comes from the island of Lemnos, inhabited only by women. The Lemnian women had tragically killed all the men on the island because of an ancient slight from Aphrodite, and they have been living a quiet, isolated life ever since. The Argonauts arrive, and the soft, immediate connection between the heroes and the women causes a long, contented pause in the quest. It is the great hero Heracles who, ever focused, reminds Jason that they must not linger, shaking them gently back to the purpose of their long journey. Heracles, always driven by quiet necessity, soon separates from the crew during a search for his young companion, Hylas, who is mysteriously pulled into the water by a sympathetic water nymph. Jason and the others quietly sail on, feeling the absence of their strongest crewmate. The journey continues, bringing them to the court of King Phineus, a blind seer cursed by Zeus because he revealed too many of the gods' quiet secrets. Every time Phineus tries to eat, the hideous bird, like harpies, descend in a loud, flapping flurry, snatching his food away and leaving behind a terrible, noxious smell. The Argonauts, led by the winged brothers Zeus and Calais, chase the harpies far into the distance, freeing Phineus from his constant, humiliating hunger. In gratitude, Phineus gives them vital, softly whispered advice for the next stage of their voyage. The most terrifying physical obstacle is the passage through the Symplegades, the clashing rocks. These are two massive, dark cliffs at the entrance to the Black Sea that constantly and slowly crash together, crushing any ship that attempts to sail through. Phineus's quiet advice is simply send a dove through first. If the dove makes it, the Argo should attempt the passage immediately after. The Argonauts watch the dove shoot through the narrow gap. The rocks clap together with a massive, deep thud, clipping only the dove's tail feathers. Seeing their chance, the Argonauts row with frantic, unified strength. The great ship, aided by the quiet power of Athena, speeds through just as the rocks begin to slowly pull apart, escaping with only minor damage to the stern. Once the Argo passes, the rocks stop clashing forever, finally rooted in place. A beautiful quirk of myth, suggesting that once a great, impossible passage is made, it can never be impossible again. After a long, quiet stretch of sailing, the Argo finally reaches its destination Colchis, the kingdom ruled by King Aegeus, son of the sun god Helios. The golden fleece hangs high in a sacred grove nearby. Guarded by a sleepless dragon and the fearsome, quiet men who grow from dragon's teeth. Jason immediately meets the king, who is unwelcoming and deeply suspicious of this quiet foreign arrival. King Aegeus agrees to give Jason the fleece, but only if he can complete a series of quiet, impossible tasks. The tasks are designed to be utterly fatal one. Jason must yoke two massive, fire-breathing bronze bulls, gifts from Hephaestus, using only his own strength. 2. He must use these bulls to plow a vast, hard field. 3. He must then sow this newly plowed field with the remaining dragon's teeth. 4. Finally, he must defeat the silent, armed men who immediately spring from the ground where the teeth were sown. It is a setup, a clear, slow march to death, and Jason knows it. He has come a long way, however, and he is not prepared to surrender. Once again, the success of the hero hinges on a woman's quiet intervention. King Aegeus has a daughter, Medea, a powerful sorceress and priestess of Hecate. The goddess Hera, still quietly favoring Jason because of his kindness to her in disguise, ensures that Medea falls instantly, deeply, and disastrously in love with the young hero. Medea meets Jason in secret. She is a woman of quiet intensity and immense power. She offers him a magical ointment that will protect him from the bulls, searing fire and the strength of the armed men for an entire day. She also whispers to him the secret of defeating the quiet, earth-born warriors. Jason agrees to her help and promises to take her back to Greece as his wife. The next morning, Jason steps onto the field. He is terrifyingly calm, protected by Medea's ointment. He walks right up to the massive, hot-breathed bronze bulls, and, with a combination of magical strength and immense will, he quietly yokes them. The earth trembles as he forces them to plow the field. Then he sows the terrifying dragon's teeth, watching as the quiet ground gives birth to a silent, armed army that instantly turns on him. This is the moment for Medea's secret to save him. As the warriors advance, Jason throws a large stone into the center of their ranks. The warriors, unable to discern where the stone came from, immediately turn their quiet, deadly fury on each other, falling into a silent, internal conflict. By the time they realize their mistake, only a few are left, and Jason swiftly defeats them. Jason has completed the impossible tasks, but King Aegeus, furious and unwilling to hand over the sacred fleece, secretly plans to burn the Argo and kill the Argonauts that very night. Medea, aware of her father's quiet betrayal, acts first. She leads Jason in secret to the sacred grove where the golden fleece hangs from an oak tree, softly glowing with a golden light. The massive, sleepless dragon, the Drakon, guards the tree. Medea uses her quiet, powerful sorcery, chanting ancient words and sprinkling a powerful sleeping drug onto the monster. You imagine the giant dragon slowly, quietly closing its eyes, its immense, scaled body settling down for an eternal, deep slumber. Jason quickly snatches the golden fleece, a weightless, beautifully warm token of divine power. They flee back to the Argo in the deep, quiet night, taking Medea's young brother, Odysseus, with them, and silently sail away from Colchis. The voyage home is not simple. King Aegeus gives chase, and in a moment of terrible, quiet desperation, Medea performs a horrifying act. She sacrifices her own brother, cutting him up and tossing the pieces into the sea. Her father, the king, is forced to slow his pursuit to collect the scattered, gentle remains, granting the Argo the vital time they need to escape. This terrible, quiet moment stains the success of their quest and introduces the devastating theme of Medea's powerful, often uncontrollable passions. Their journey back takes them on an equally long, winding road, often guided by the magic of Medea, avoiding the main routes to evade the pursuing Colchians. They pass by the island of the Sirens, whose quiet, impossibly beautiful songs lure sailors to their deaths on the sharp rocks. It is the Argonaut Orpheus, the great singer, who saves them. He sits in the center of the ship and quietly plays his lyre, his own sweet, strong song overpowering the sirens' deadly lullaby, allowing the crew to row past in a trance of soft, competing music. They also pass the notorious strait guarded by the six-headed monster Scylla and the massive whirlpool, creating Charybdis, navigating the narrow, terrible choice between two crushing disasters. Finally, after many more long, quiet stretches of sailing, the Argo returns to Iolcus. Jason presents the golden fleece to his usurping uncle, Peleus, fulfilling the seemingly impossible demand. However, Peleus quietly refuses to give up the throne. Medea, utterly devoted to Jason, but deeply angered by Peleus's treachery, devises a new, quiet plan. She approaches Peleus's daughters and convinces them that she has a powerful magic that can restore their elderly father to youth. She demonstrates her power by quietly cutting up an old ram and boiling the pieces in a cauldron with magical herbs. Out of the cauldron leaps a young, frisky lamb. The daughters, believing her quiet trick, agree to try it on their father. They quietly cut up the sleeping Peleus and place the pieces in the boiling cauldron. Medea, however, only boils the water, refusing to add the vital, life-restoring herbs. Peleus remains a quiet, failed experiment, a chilling testament to Medea's dangerous power, and a moment of final, quiet vengeance for Jason. Jason and Medea have regained the kingdom, but the quiet horror of Medea's actions, the murder of her own brother, and the gruesome trickery of Peleus, turns the people against them. They are forced to flee Iolcus and quietly seek refuge in Corinth. The story of the Argonauts ends with the successful completion of the quest. But the quiet, deep emotional cost is immense. Jason has his fame and the fleece, but he has secured it through the powerful, terrible love of a sorceress, a bond that will soon break in a moment of deep, profound tragedy. The fleece is now safely tucked away, and the age of the great, quiet nautical adventure draws to a close. As you drift on the soft, receding waves of the Argonauts' long journey, the stage is being set on the mainland for a much more public and much louder catastrophe, the story of Oedipus and the inevitable tragedy of the Trojan War. The quiet ripples of the gods' decisions are now turning into massive, slow waves. You now leave the quiet sea journey of the Argonauts and drift toward the mainland, where the soft, quiet flow of destiny is beginning to pool into a series of massive, overwhelming tragedies. We follow two interwoven threads of sorrow, the cursed house of Thebes and the massive, slow build-up to the Trojan War. These stories show you how the quiet actions of the gods and the simple errors of mortals can twist a family line or an entire civilization into inescapable sorrow. The story of Thebes centers on a family cursed by the gods, a line where quiet misfortune is passed down like a dark inheritance. It begins, again, with a prophecy. The gods, in their subtle cruelty, always seem to leave a soft, clear warning that no one is able to heed. King Laius and Queen Jocasta of Thebes receive a dire message. Their son is destined to kill his father and marry his mother. Terrified and determined to quietly defy fate, Laius orders his infant son to be exposed on a desolate mountain. The baby's ankles are quietly pierced and pinned, earning him the name Oedipus, meaning swollen foot. A sympathetic shepherd, however, cannot bear to leave the child to die. He quietly takes the infant and gives him to a fellow shepherd, who then carries him far away to Corinth, where Oedipus is raised as the son of King Polybus and Queen Merope. Oedipus grows up strong and secure, until one day a drunkard quietly taunts him, suggesting he is not his father's true son. Troubled, Oedipus travels to the oracle at Delphi. The oracle does not answer his question about his parentage, but instead delivers the original, terrifying prophecy to him directly. He will kill his father and marry his mother. Oedipus, believing his parents are the king and queen of Corinth, is horrified. To protect them, he quietly chooses the path of exile, leaving Corinth forever and traveling toward Thebes. On a narrow, dusty road, Oedipus quietly encounters an arrogant, older man driving a chariot. Neither will yield the road. In the resulting short, sharp quarrel, Oedipus, in a burst of quiet anger, kills the man and his attendants, save for one who escapes. He continues on his way, completely unaware of the immense, final significance of this short fight. He arrives at Thebes to find the city in a state of quiet crisis. Their king, Laius, his true father, whom he just killed, is dead, and a terrible monster, the Sphinx, is blocking the city gates. The Sphinx is a creature with the body of a lion, the wings of a bird, and the head of a woman. She quietly poses a riddle to every traveler, devouring those who cannot answer. Her riddle is soft, simple, and deadly. What walks on 4 feet in the morning, 2 feet at noon, and 3 feet in the evening? Oedipus, with his quiet, clever mind, answers immediately: man. Man crawls as a baby, walks upright as an adult, and uses a cane in old age. The Sphinx, defeated, quietly throws herself from the cliff and dies. In immense gratitude, the Theban people, believing him a quiet savior, elevate Oedipus to the throne and offer him the widowed Queen Jocasta's hand in marriage. The prophecy is now quietly, dreadfully fulfilled. For years, Oedipus and Jocasta rule Thebes in quiet happiness, having 4 children together. Then, a new plague descends upon the city, a terrible, slow disease that withers life. The oracle is consulted again, and the message returns: the plague will only lift when the murderer of King Laius is found and punished. Oedipus, the king, quietly and relentlessly seeks the killer. The blind prophet Tiresias is finally forced to reveal the awful, simple truth. Oedipus himself is the murderer, and he is living in incestuous marriage with his own mother. The realization is a terrible, slow dawn of horror. Jocasta, understanding the quiet, total horror of her fate, hangs herself in the silence of her chamber. Oedipus, discovering her body, takes the gold pins from her robe, and, in a fit of profound, quiet despair, blinds himself. He chooses to live in darkness, so he can never again look upon the terrible truth he has witnessed. He leaves Thebes, a quiet, sightless wanderer, led only by his devoted daughter, Antigone. The terrible, soft sorrow of his quiet life is a profound statement on the unstoppable nature of fate when the gods are involved. This is a mainstream historical fact. The tragedy of Oedipus has been analyzed for centuries, and his story is the origin of the psychological term Oedipus complex, a reflection of its deep, lasting impact on the understanding of the human subconscious. The quiet, tragic currents then shift toward the greatest of all Greek mythological conflicts, the Trojan War. This war is not caused by a noble quest or a great monster, but by a single, disastrous, quiet moment of vanity and a simple human choice. The story begins with a celebration, a soft, bright wedding feast for the hero Peleus and the sea nymph Thetis. The Olympian gods are all present, except for one Eris, the quiet, disruptive goddess of discord. Angry at being excluded, Eris quietly rolls a single golden apple into the feast. Inscribed on the apple are the words, "For the fairest." Immediately, 3 great goddesses claim the apple: Hera, the queen; Athena, the strategist; and Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty. A quiet, tense argument erupts, and no one dares to choose between them, not even Zeus, who wisely refuses to get involved. Zeus delegates the task to a mortal, Paris, a quiet prince of Troy, who is currently living as a shepherd on Mount Ida, having been quietly sent away due to another earlier, dark prophecy concerning his city's ruin. The three goddesses appear before Paris and offer him quiet, irresistible bribes. Hera offers him dominion over all of Asia, the quiet power of a king. Athena offers him wisdom and quiet, undefeated prowess in battle. Aphrodite offers him the hand of the most beautiful mortal woman in the world. Paris, a mortal more guided by passion than power or wisdom, quietly chooses Aphrodite. She promises him Helen, the wife of King Menelaus of Sparta. Paris, armed with Aphrodite's promise, travels as a quiet guest to Sparta. In Menelaus's absence, Paris violates the quiet, sacred law of guest, friendship, or xenia, and leaves Sparta, taking Helen with him back to Troy. Whether Helen went willingly, overcome by Aphrodite's quiet magic, or was simply abducted, remains a core scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether Helen's agency in leaving Sparta was forced by the god's will or a tragic expression of her own desire. Menelaus is furious and humiliated by this quiet, profound insult. He calls upon his brother, Agamemnon, the king of Mycenae, and the most powerful of the Greek rulers, to help him recover his honor and his wife. The entire network of Greek kings and heroes had sworn an oath years earlier to defend Helen's husband, Menelaus, regardless of who was chosen. This ancient, quiet oath now binds them to this massive, destructive war. The heroes gather their immense armies and ships, a gathering of the greatest quiet strength the world has ever seen. The fleet is led by Agamemnon, the High King, a man of great power but quiet arrogance. Among the heroes are Odysseus, the clever, quiet king of Ithaca, known for his cunning mind. He initially tried to quietly feign madness to avoid the war, but his trickery was exposed. Nestor, the ancient, quiet voice of wisdom and strategy. Ajax the Great, a colossal man of immense, quiet strength, second only to the greatest warrior. And finally, the greatest warrior of all, the quiet, almost god, like Achilles. Achilles is the son of the previously mentioned Peleus and the sea nymph Thetis. Thetis had quietly dipped her infant son into the river Styx, the quiet boundary of the underworld, to make him invincible. She held him by the heel, leaving that one small, soft spot, his Achilles' heel, vulnerable. Achilles, knowing his fate, that he is destined to die young but gain eternal, quiet glory, reluctantly joins the fight. The quiet gathering of the massive fleet at Aulis is delayed by a lack of wind, a sign of the gods' displeasure. The prophet Calchas reveals the quiet, chilling truth. Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, is angry at Agamemnon for a past slight. To appease her, Agamemnon must make a terrible, quiet choice. He must sacrifice his own innocent daughter, Iphigenia. Agamemnon, faced with the choice between his quiet parental love and his lust for war and glory, makes the tragic decision. Iphigenia is lured to Aulis under the false pretense of marrying Achilles and is quietly sacrificed. Immediately, the winds fill the sails, and the massive fleet begins its slow, steady crossing of the Aegean Sea toward the dark, Quiet walls of Troy. This quiet act of sacrifice seals Agamemnon's fate and introduces the bitter, simmering resentment of his wife, Clytemnestra, that will haunt him later. The siege of Troy begins. It is not a quick victory, but a long, quiet, 10-year stalemate. The walls of Troy, built by Poseidon and Apollo, are immense and virtually impenetrable. The war quickly settles into a cycle of repetitive raiding, quiet skirmishes, and the occasional massive, set-piece battle that barely moves the lines. The gods themselves are quietly, actively involved, choosing sides. Hera, Athena, and Poseidon support the Greeks, Achaeans, driven by old grudges and the slight of Paris. Aphrodite, Apollo, and Ares quietly support the Trojans. Zeus watches from Olympus, sometimes intervening with a soft, quiet shift of the balance to prolong the conflict and ensure fate is played out. A quirky tidbit about the gods during the war. They often appeared as quiet, familiar figures like an old advisor or a brother, to deliver a sharp command or encourage a hero in battle, never revealing their true divine identity to the masses. The war drags on, a grinding, quiet effort that wears down both sides. You feel the immense, heavy monotony of the long siege, the quiet waste of 10 years of life spent far from home. The true climax, however, is yet to come, waiting for the one massive explosion of grief and rage that will finally break the stalemate. You are now deep in the quiet, dusty silence of the 10th year of the siege of Troy. The immense conflict has devolved into a weary, monotonous grind, a quiet war of attrition, where the initial fire of heroism has been replaced by bitter exhaustion. The gods still watch from Olympus, their interventions now subtle shifts of fortune, rather than grand appearances. The fate of Troy rests not on sheer strength, but on a moment of quiet, human rage, and a final act of cunning. The stalemate is finally broken by a petty, arrogant quarrel between the two greatest Greek leaders, Agamemnon and Achilles. Agamemnon, the High King, quietly insults Achilles by taking a captured woman, Perseus, whom Achilles had claimed as a prize. The insult is profound, an affront to Achilles' honor and his quiet, fierce sense of self-worth. In response, Achilles, in a fit of powerful, sulking rage, withdraws himself and his formidable myrmidon, soldiers from the fighting. He sits quietly in his tent by the ships, praying to his mother, the sea nymph Thetis, to influence Zeus and ensure the Greeks suffer terrible losses until Agamemnon begs for his return. Zeus, honoring a past favor for Thetis, agrees, and the tide of the war immediately turns against the Greeks. The Trojan forces, led by the noble and quiet Prince Hector, the greatest warrior on the Trojan side and the steadfast protector of his city, pushed the Greeks back toward their ships. The entire Greek camp is filled with a deep, quiet dread. The one person who can stir Achilles is his closest companion, Patroclus. Patroclus quietly begs Achilles to return to the fight, or at least allow him to wear Achilles' distinctive armor into battle to restore the Greeks' morale and confuse the Trojans. Achilles, still rigid in his quiet anger, finally relents, but gives a strict warning. Only push the Trojans back from the ships. Do not pursue them to the city walls. Patroclus, fueled by the rush of the fight and the fear for his comrades, ignores the quiet command. He fights brilliantly, pushing the Trojans back to the city gates. There, he is finally met and killed by Hector in a terrible, quiet clash. The news of Patroclus's death shatters Achilles' world. The quiet, simmering rage he held for Agamemnon instantly transforms into a terrifying, boundless sorrow and a lust for vengeance against Hector. Thetis, his mother, knowing he will die soon if he returns to battle, quietly travels to the forge of Hephaestus to commission a new, spectacular set of armor and a massive shield. Achilles returns to the battle, a figure of quiet, lethal fury, moving through the Trojan ranks with an unstoppable momentum. He finally meets Hector outside the Scaean gates of Troy. Hector, knowing his death is inevitable, and that he is the last hope of his city, quietly faces Achilles, embodying the quiet, noble sacrifice of a man fighting for his home. Achilles slays Hector and, in a fit of devastating, dishonorable grief, drags Hector's body behind his chariot around the walls of Troy for days. The final act of reconciliation is a soft, quiet scene in the dark of night. King Priam of Troy, Hector's elderly father, bravely steals into Achilles' tent and quietly begs the warrior to return his son's body for a proper burial. Achilles, moved by the old man's profound sorrow and dignity, finally sees a reflection of his own inevitable fate and quietly returns the body, allowing for a temporary 11-day truce for the funeral rites. Achilles' fate is sealed. He is soon killed in battle, struck in his one vulnerable spot, his heel, by an arrow from Paris, guided by the quiet god Apollo. His brief, brilliant life ends, securing him the eternal, quiet fame he always sought. With Achilles gone, the Greeks must turn to cunning. They cannot breach the walls. So Odysseus, the clever king of Ithaca, devises the final, quiet deception, the Trojan horse. The Greeks build a massive, hollow wooden horse and quietly fill it with their best, most silent warriors. They burn their camp, board their ships, and sail just out of sight, making it appear they have abandoned the long siege and fled. They leave only the massive, quiet horse as a gift, a tribute to Athena for their safe voyage home. The Trojans, weary and overjoyed that the 10-year war is finally over, argue about what to do with the strange gift. The priest Laocoon quietly warns them, uttering the famous, chilling line, "I fear the Greeks," even when bearing gifts. But before he can convince them, 2 massive, silent sea snakes, sent by the angry god Poseidon, emerge from the waves and quietly crush Laocoon and his 2 sons. The Trojans take this as a sign that the gods want them to accept the horse. They quietly breach their own walls and pull the massive, hollow horse into the heart of the city. They celebrate, believing they are finally safe, and that night the entire city falls into a deep, relieved sleep. In the dark, deepest hours before dawn, the Greek warriors quietly emerge from the belly of the horse. They open the city gates, letting the main Greek army, which had quietly sailed back under the cover of night, into the city. Troy is finally taken in a night of terrible, quiet violence and destruction. The city burns, and the great war is finally, brutally concluded. The aftermath is a period of quiet, long suffering returns known as the nostoi, or homecomings. The gods, angry at the Greeks for the desecration of the temples and the arrogant brutality of their victory, punish them with terrible, slow journeys home. The most famous of these is the Odyssey, the long, quiet 10-year journey of Odysseus back to his island kingdom of Ithaca. His journey is a series of encounters with powerful, quiet magic and the capriciousness of the gods, primarily the relentless, deep-seated anger of Poseidon, the sea god, whom Odysseus had offended by blinding his son, the Cyclops Polyphemus. You follow Odysseus through his trials. He is trapped in the quiet, soft luxury of the nymph Calypso's island for 7 long years, unable to leave, held captive by her desperate, quiet love. He navigates past the seductive, deadly song of the sirens by having his crew plug their ears and tying himself to the mast. He loses men to the 6-headed monster Scylla and the whirlpool Charybdis. His men are transformed into quiet animals by the sorceress Circe, from whom he must gain safe passage. Throughout it all, Odysseus is driven by one thing: the quiet, simple desire to return home to his steadfast wife, Penelope, and his son, Telemachus. Back in Ithaca, Penelope is quietly besieged by a crowd of greedy, arrogant suitors who consume Odysseus's wealth and demand her hand in marriage, believing the king is dead. Penelope stalls them for years with quiet cunning, promising to choose a husband only after she finishes weaving a massive burial shroud for her father-in-law, which she quietly unweaves every night. Finally, after his 10-year voyage, Odysseus arrives home, disguised as a quiet, humble beggar. Only his ancient dog, Argos, recognizes him before quietly dying of old age. Odysseus and Telemachus quietly plot their revenge. Penelope, having run out of options, announces an archery contest. She will marry the man who can string Odysseus's massive, silent bow and shoot an arrow cleanly through the holes of 12 axe heads lined up in a row. Not a single suitor can even string the bow. The beggar Odysseus asks for a turn, and in a quiet, simple motion, he strings the bow. He easily shoots the arrow through the 12 axes. The contest ends, and the final, quiet battle begins. Odysseus, Telemachus, and a few loyal servants slaughter the helpless suitors, reclaiming his home in a final, bloody act of justice. The story closes with Odysseus finally reuniting with Penelope, a quiet moment of recognition after 20 long years of separation. 10 at war, 10 at sea. The fate of the other Greek heroes is similarly fraught. Agamemnon returns home, only to be murdered quietly in his bath by his angry wife, Clytemnestra, and her new lover, as revenge for the sacrifice of their daughter, Iphigenia. This crime sets off another cycle of tragedy, as Agamemnon's son, Orestes, is later compelled by the quiet, inexorable power of the Erinyes, Furies, to avenge his father by killing his mother. This cycle of terrible vengeance is finally broken through the divine intervention of Athena in a formal court in Athens, establishing the quiet principle of law over blood feud. As these final human dramas play out, you feel the slow, inevitable fading influence of the gods. The golden age of heroes, where gods and men walked and warred together, is ending. The gods retreat further into the soft, swirling clouds of Mount Olympus, becoming more distant, more quiet, and less actively involved in the day-to-day affairs of mortals. Man has learned to use fire, to build ships, to form laws, and to solve the Sphinx's riddle. The mortals are still subject to fate and sorrow, but the great, constant presence of the divine is slowly receding into the whisper of history. The great stories of Greek mythology are not just tales of gods and monsters. They are the quiet, profound record of humanity growing up, learning to deal with tragedy, ambition, and the quiet, persistent challenge of living a difficult, short life. You have traced the journey from the deep, vast silence of chaos to the long, difficult return of Odysseus. The whole cycle, from the cosmic birth to the final, quiet homecoming, has settled into the vast archive of history. The gods are now just a quiet reflection on the distant horizon, powerful, but no longer the constant, daily reality. The world is finally quiet, secured for the long, slow reign of man. The journey is complete now. You can feel the quiet weight of all those centuries, all those immense, slow events, settling softly into the deep history of your mind. Let the colossal images of the Titans fade gently. Let the bright flash of Zeus's lightning dim, and allow the distant, salty scent of the Argo to quietly evaporate from the air around you. There is no more rushing now. No more need for the warrior's rage or the cunning hero's long plotting. Your feet are planted firmly on the quiet, steady earth, the same Gaia who woke from chaos so long ago. You can hear the soft, steady hum of the night around you, a sound much more comforting and real than the clashing of mythical rocks or the silent march of a phantom army. Let your breathing become as slow and as deep as the gentle, vast rhythm of the ocean that Poseidon commands. Feel the soft, heavy pull of gravity, which is simply the earth holding you close, inviting you to rest. All the heroes have found their rest, all the battles have ended, and all the long journeys have come to their quiet, final destination. You are safe, warm, and utterly still. The long history is done. All that is left now is the gentle, quiet descent into a well-earned, deep, long sleep. Let your worries drift away like the silent, scattered pieces of an ancient, forgotten ship. They hold no power over you here. They are simply faint whispers of the past. Rest now. There is only the soft darkness and the promise of a quiet, peaceful morning. Sleep. End of script. Sweet dreams.